Thanks for joining us in the Florida Today newsroom. Today we visit the area most affected by downsizing at Kennedy Space Center, and we talk with a leader at the center of efforts to recover. County Commissioner Robin Fisher of Titusville spearheaded creation of the North Brevard Economic Development Zone and has championed redevelopment of the Miracle City Mall. I asked him about the progress on that. I also asked him to explain his vote for a new multi-million-dollar trash hauling contract that has generated some controversy. Also coming up in the program, public interest curator Alice Garwood shares your opinions from letters to the editor, and we'll tell you how to weigh in. Now, watch my interview with Robin Fisher, with whom we sat down in his District 1 office in Titusville. Robin, you have spent the last 4 years as a commissioner leading some pretty high-profile efforts to help North Brevard recover from downsizing at Kennedy Space Center and a recession. You're also a businessman in Titusville and have a pretty good head for numbers, as I've seen so far. How does Robin Fisher, the businessman, judge the progress or rate the performance of Robin Fisher, the commissioner, so far?
Robin is the businessman. You know, I think I bring a business mind to the council because of my previous business experience, and so a lot of times I'll relate back in conversations we have about how I related to current business. But I think we had a very successful 4 years. I mean, we did a lot of good things, and that's probably obvious if I got reelected after I'm the only Democrat on that board, so and only elected high, you know, and as far as in the county. So, but I think we had a great 4 years really, and I'm looking forward to finishing up some of the things we started. And that's actually why I decided to run again, because I felt people felt like we had momentum and we had things going on, and it looked like you know, it wouldn't have been good to back out now. So. And I know we'll probably talk about some of those things, but
we'll talk about some of the results. What have you been able to accomplish thus far?
Okay, yeah. Well, thanks for asking. You know, first of all, as commissioner, I kind of came in and first thing I said, if North Brevard is going to be successful, we got to start doing things differently, and we got to do things like it's never been done before. And I recognize that some of those things that we might do are going to be unorthodox, or somebody's going to say something about them, and they're not going to be typical for what happens up here on this end of the county. But we got to be willing to do that, and we've got to be aggressive in our approach to it. And so, you know, one of the things we're proud of is that, and this is the first time it's ever happened in the history of this county, but you know, we've paved over 102 miles of roads in District 1 alone in the last 2 years. Spent about $9 million. You know, the commissioners decided to change the way the makeup of transportation dollars were being spent. You know, gas tax dollars, basically bond dollars, and in the process, we said, you know, we're going to do something that's never happened. You know, we're going to pave in front of some people's homes that haven't had their homes paved in years, and we're on 102 miles of roads, over 300 different streets. And the people in the north end of the county are very, very happy about that, because they've been waiting years to do that. And unfortunately, we got there's 96 miles of road in the county that's dirt. 83 of them are in District 1. And so we've paved about 5 or 6 miles of roads where people have never had roads in front of their house that were dirt roads. And so they're Canaveral Groves and Scottsmoors and some of those areas, people are feeling good about that.
Is it a difference maker in terms of the economy, jobs, some of the things that people are really concerned about?
Yes, it is. I mean, there's nothing like a nicely new paved road in front of your house, you know. I mean, especially I've seen some of the stories in Palm Bay. I've seen some of the stories in Port St. John that we actually went and repaired some of those roads. And to be honest with you, when you got potholes and stuff like that, the neighborhood just doesn't show as well as others. And then, you know, speaking of other accomplishments in roads, since we're on the road thing, is that, you know, when the North Brevard Economic Development Zone got formed, one of the things that we were able to do through the Economic Development Zone was to partner with the county and form a new Space Coast Infrastructure Agency. And that infrastructure agency ended up partnering with a contractor, Land Construction, and FDOT, and then we ended up moving up the paving of I-95 from Garden Street in Titusville to actually State Road 44 in Volusia County by 4 years. And the zone having the ability to form that partnership with the county and then this new agency. And FDOT actually floated some bonds and actually guaranteed the cost of that construction. But you know, moving commerce I-95. This is basically the only part of the county that's left to get finished, and it wasn't set for another 4 years, and we actually speeded that process up. And so we think that's going to, when you got good roads, that's good for economic development.
One of the things that I know the Economic Development Zone was created to do was to try to offer incentives or work with companies to try to bring in some employers and get some jobs going. Have there been any leads or successes on that front?
Yeah, the one partnership that I just mentioned was Space Coast Infrastructure Agency, but the other thing that, Zone's first responsibility was to get a board. And then after they got a board, the next responsibility was that board to come up with an economic plan that you could get both the county commission and the city of Titusville to buy off on. That plan was in place, and then the next big hurdle was to find a director for the zone. And we actually gone through 15 interviews 2 weeks ago, and down to 3 final candidates, and that candidate will be hired here. I think we got final interviews on March 8th, and then that zone will have a director, and the board is has been positioning herself to do some things. There's the board that agreed to incentivize Rocket Crafter, and once that deal comes into the play and happens, and that was something that helped. And that there's a couple other deals that EDC is working today, and they're using some potential zone revenue to help make those deals happen.
What does the unemployment picture look like up here? Who's still hurting?
Well, there's I'm going to say man, I don't have the exact number, but I want to think it's down about 10%. 9 to 10%. And some of the laid off Kennedy Space Center workers haven't found work, no doubt about that. Some of them, are retired. Some of them open their own businesses. But so I try to explain to people. People say, "Well, it was like you're going hit by a hurricane," and we got hit. I think a lot of the people thought it was going to be a Cat 5 storm. I think it was a Cat 2. But just like any community, you kind of rebound, after you've been hit from a storm, and you rebuild, and it's made us get innovative, made us to do things differently, and it wasn't as near as bad as I think a lot of people anticipated. But if you're looking for work and you can't find it, that's not good. And so that's why we got the Economic Development Zone, to kind of make sure that anybody that want to work, we can do the things to help make that happen.
Another challenge facing North Brevard's growth and development is the Miracle City Mall in Titusville. I asked Fisher about his efforts to find a developer to create something new on the site. Take a look. One of the projects you've been involved with is redevelopment of the Miracle City Mall. Mm-hmm. Explain that.
Yeah. Well, I probably ought to explain GTR. GTR is known as Greater Titusville Renaissance. And a couple of years ago, I recognized that when you looked at Kennedy Space Center job loss, we had some high-paying wage jobs. But we were having a challenge, Matt, that if we had a potential investor or somebody, a company that wanted to move to our area, we had to figure out what route we wanted to take him on. And it always wasn't the shortest route, because we had some areas that we just weren't very, very proud of in our community. And so out of that came a brainstorm, and make a story because of time short, but my wife kind of challenged me that you need to try to change the look of this community. And so I took her to heart. You know how you do that, right, with your spouse.
Sure.
And we actually we formed GTR, went to the mayor and said, I need you to partner with me on this, because you got a problem in your city, Titusville, but I've got a problem in Mims, Scottsmore, Port St. John, that we've got areas of our community that just doesn't look good, and I represent Titusville also. And I said that we've got to change the way we look. And so we got to get this community to start realizing that there's nobody from Washington, D.C. is going to save us, that we're going to have to save ourselves. And if we're going to go through that process, then I need everybody to get on board and take ownership of this. And so out of those meetings, community groups, 100, 120, 150 people showing up, and I kind of gave that pitch of how we got to change the way we look and we got to take control of our own destiny. They came out with some clear directions. One is, we need to clean our corridors up. We need to be involved in community development. We need to, arts and culture can change the community. We need to start supporting that effort. One of the biggest things you have in the middle of your community is a 32-acre site that's blight of a mall that needs to change.
It's a big one.
It's a big one, and then you got to find some funding. So North Brevard Economic Development Zone was kind of that funding source for me. Then the other thing was, okay, you want to change that mall, and let's go do that. And so, you know, kind of unorthodox, but a commissioner on a Saturday, he gets in the car and he drives to Lake City. He goes and sees the developer of the mall, and he says, you know, you own that property. What's your intentions? He says, I don't have any intentions. I said, well, he says, I inherited the mall, and I got it back from a bunch of Canadians that actually had owned it, and they just gave us the key one day. And we sold it, but the person that was going to develop it went belly up, so we had to take it back because they carried a mortgage. And so we don't have any intentions on it. You know, we're just hoping we find a buyer someday. And so, and the community was kind of out there saying, Robin, you know, can you take this one on, you know? And I said, you know, yeah. And so I told the guy, I said, hey, I'm gonna try to find you a developer. And so, you know, out of my own pocket one day, I paid $500 to go over to the International Shopping Center Council in Orlando. I walk around with a briefcase of packages on North Brevard, and I start talking to developers and trying to find a developer that would listen to me, like a trade show.
Okay.
It's an actual trade show. And just walked around to a bunch of them and saying, I got a mall in Ticeville, got 32 acres, and at the time J.C. Penney's was, you know, still there, and said, I need somebody to help me redevelop it. And so they finally I found one that didn't totally work out. He was interested, but the seller was being kind of difficult in trying to make the deal work. So we've got another one now, a guy by Alan Goins, and he's got a partnership with a company out of Columbus, Ohio, and they're excited, and I'll share the artist rendering with you and stuff like that. And so when we're doing everything we can from this office to change, be aggressive, and I'm taking, and I used to sell real estate for 6 years, so I understand their language and the lingo and that part. And so we're just trying to be aggressive and to try to help this developer become successful and redevelop that. And what that does is that, you know, that property right now has about a $95,000 a year tax base, and if you and this is a $53 million project. If you do it, you change your tax base, you change your shop in the community, you get rid of blight in the heart of your community, and I kind of realize that it's one of those big things. People sometimes think I'm crazy, like, can you really do this? And I think that, you know, if you're going to go change something, this is one of those ones that's, you change the big one, the bad one, you know, and then they believe, then everything else will be easier.
Is there a timetable for replacing it, destroying the old mall? What's next?
Well, what's next is that the developer is actually out talking to tenants. Okay. And he has 7 tenants that he's identified that has shown an interest. They got to run that through their boards and, you know, and sure, committees and all that. And so so he's hit a couple hurdles, you know. Demographics is always a factor, you know. And do you have enough people in the market area of the shop? And we've had to change the strategy of how you market North Brevard, knowing that so much of what we own to the east is federal government or water or land and doesn't have a lot of people. And we've convinced him that drive time is important here. Where's the nearest place this person going for? And so, and when you take that drive time, you get about 100,000 plus people from Port St. John to Scottsmore, and those demographics are a lot more sellable than just looking at 5 miles around the facility.
So it's a vertical market, a little bit different. Kennedy Space Center and the river are there. You organized some kind of a big group picture in front of this. What was that? Yeah,
I told my legislative assistant and a couple of people that helped her on this. I said, we got to do things different, and I've always said that while we're up here. And you know, I've known stores in this county actually don't even have a groundbreaking when they're open, you know. and so we've got a dark mall that's dead, and that I want to show a national retailer, as Mr. Goins is starting to go out and talk to these guys, that this community is serious about shopping and we want them here. And so we called for a party at Miracle City Mall Monday on 2 weeks' notice, and said, you know, when we got a local helicopter company there, their name is skipping me, I'm sorry, but and then we had them come out, and they actually had a photographer, and they filmed the community came up at 5:30 on a Monday to actually show a developer. Wow. And we had a developer there also, and so he spoke and showed people what his plans were, and the community really got supportive and behind him.
Well, good luck with that. Hopefully you'll have some shopping in Titusville here pretty soon. We'll have more of my interview with County Commissioner Robin Fisher in just a moment. Now, here's Alice Garwood with a look at your letters to the editor.
A few readers weighed in on school-related issues, including this letter writer in response to Sunday's guest column, Make Students a Priority. Bill Hall of Melbourne writes, I suggest guest columnist Michael Hartman work as a high school dean all day, every day for 1 full week. Afterward, I recommend he write his opinion about cutting school-based administrators. He will quickly learn that writing a column in the comfort of his office, so disconnected from reality, is very easy. Robert Good of Melbourne shared his view about the state class size amendment. School board members who are contemplating violating the state constitution are not the ones who will be punished for this deed. It will be our students who will be adversely affected by program eliminations and punitive schedule changes. And James Stubbins of Melbourne writes, I support the notion that participants in the retirement drop program should be the first to be laid off when funding cuts make it necessary to cut school budgets. If you take a job in retirement, you should go back to being a plain retiree before anyone whose career has never ended is laid off involuntarily. Politics also is on the mind of many of our readers this past week. Patrick Kent of Merritt Island writes, I am getting real tired of the Republican bashers whose letters regularly are printed. They blame Republicans for everything they can think of, whether true or not. The Republican-controlled House has passed more than 30 bills to deal with our fiscal ills, but the corrupt Senate has not brought any to the floor for an up or down vote. Regarding sequestration, Glenn Lackey of Merritt Island writes, the sequester will result in a federal budget that is still $15 billion higher this year than last year, and 30% higher than it was when President Barack Obama took office. How can that be? I'm Alice Garwood, Public Interest Curator for Florida Today. We would like to hear your views on these and other issues. Please send your letters to letters@floridatoday.com.
Thanks, Alice. Well, one issue that has generated letters and some controversy was the Commission's approval last month of a new trash and recycling contract with Waste Management Incorporated. As part of its proposal, the company pointed to its track record of local giving to charities and economic development efforts. What normally is considered smart public relations instead generated questions about whether the company was, quote, paying to play. I asked Fisher to explain his vote. One of the issues that has come up on the County Commission board most recently was the new waste hauling contract with Waste Management. There's been discussion about how they get that contract. Was it appropriate for them to show that they were good community citizens and had a record of giving to different organizations in the community? Explain your yes vote for giving Waste Management a contract to haul people's trash in unincorporated Brevard.
Okay. Yeah, I explain. I'll be glad to explain it. First off, you go back to August when we actually went out and determined how we were going to do the request for proposal. And as you know, that was a request for proposal, wasn't a bid. Okay. And so in August, that was a meeting where the Commission kind of gave direction on how are we going to award this contract in the future. And so one of the things that came that I had said in that thing is it's not all about price to me. It's about service and value and what are you getting for what you're doing. I mean, I know that that people can come lowball it to get a job and then turn around and don't deliver the service. And so, boom, you roll the clock ahead. The bids are in, or request for proposals in, whatever you want to call it. And so you got Waste Pro. It's successful in the north. Waste Management's successful in the south. If you're looking at total, what the numbers say as far as what they're going to charge the citizen. Well, then that's making an assumption you want to split the contract, which I really, from a North Brevard resident standpoint, I didn't really want to sit there and try to figure out where the line was. You know, you got to call Waste Pro, you got to call Waste Management. Then the other side of it was that in my area, so many Scottsmore Mims and Canaveral Groves and Port St. John, you're not near as dense as Vieira and some Merritt Island, and so I felt like we were probably going to be at a disadvantage a little bit from a standpoint of what we're going to get charged for the services for North Brevard versus services in South Brevard. So that concerned me. And then you move the clock, and everybody comes, and no one knows because it's sealed bid or who's got what. You come make a presentation in front of the commission. Waste management gets up and makes their presentation, and the thing I noticed right away on their presentation is that they went from and they've had the contract for 5 years. They went from 14 trucks on the road to 17 trucks on the road. They're increasing it. Why would they increase it knowing they're in a competitive situation, but they're saying, they're going to put more trucks on the road? And then I looked at their amount of manpower hours. They were at 1,400 manpower hours, and they were going to go to 1,900 manpower hours. But in the same presentation, they also said our competition is going to have 8 trucks versus 17. And they're going to have 1,250 manpower hours versus 1,900 manpower hours. And so for me, I'm trying to think, that's got to be a different level of service. And I even made the example on the board that day is that, hey, if I'm just an old insurance guy, and an athlete, but if I got 19 or 17 adjusters on the road, or I got 8 adjusters on the road, the 17's got to see more people and help them get their life back to order than the 8 would. Right. And the same thing in the manpower. If I got 1,900 hours of manpower committed to handling claims versus that, then so it can't be apples to apples. So Waste Pro, you come on up and explain the scenario. Their senior management was on a cruise. The other commitment couldn't be there. $90 million county contract. Okay. No PowerPoint. A couple residents get up and say that, hey, I use them and they're a good job. I work for them. A good job. There was no way that you couldn't convince me other than what you showing me on price. I guess you could be cheaper if you got half the trucks, and you got half. And service was important to me because we get those calls, and we've got some large acreages up here in the rural area where people got a lot more yard waste and a lot more stuff, and so we didn't. That was important to us. So now you're at that point where you got to say, hey, you got to choose one of them. Right, because you can't choose both and start the conversation. Now you got to choose one of the best out of the two, and the fact that then they had agreed to put the manufacturing recycle facility in there, the MRF, and so now you're going to create jobs. Plus, we got a chance on the upside of getting some additional revenue from that, and when you look at it, the other cities surrounding what they were paying for garbage, $16, $17, $14, $15 a month. We were in the $10, $50 range, and I'm sitting there going, this is a pretty good deal, and then you put the community support on it, and then it's a little controversy there because I'm on the Field of Dreams board, but I didn't know that what they were doing for Field of Dreams. Milo Zonka was on that board, and he worked for Waste Management, so he's the one that thought about Field of Dreams, thought about EDC. He was on that board, and he was, I think he's the only one he's not on at Brevard Zoo. But Waste Management always been a good corporate partner and always have given back to the community.
One project Waste Management agreed to fund was something called the Field of Dreams, a sports complex in West Melbourne that would serve disabled children and their families. I asked Commissioner Robin Fisher for an explanation.
About, I'm going to say 2 to 3 years ago, I want to put it, I think the agreement was finally signed sometime in 11. But, out on, and this is a very, I think, I'm glad you asked this question, out on the Old Roads Park on
West
Minton
Melbourne.
Road, West Melbourne, other commissioner's district, there was some controversy about the county giving the city of West Melbourne land, because we were opening up the new roads park.
Right.
And when that happened, the county, I believe it was a 4-1 vote, but the county commission agreed to donate that land to the West Melbourne to do their own community center and rec thing because we had the new county park. And one of the things that was part of that gift was that 5 acres be cut out for the Field of Dreams.
And the Field of Dreams is from what I understand, is a facility for disabled athletes or
disabled athletes, and
Paralympians, or
well, it's disabled kids. And,
okay.
And let me tell you why it's touched my heart. This county, I look back, and we got a great one here, Chain of Lakes. we have spent hundreds of millions of dollars on recreational park for your typical athletic kid. And I don't think anybody did it on purpose, but out of the hundreds of millions of dollars been spent, nobody has ever thought about that population of kids and putting them on a surface in a field that they can compete and play and have activity. And I started thinking about that, and Jim Tapp, who's who brought it to our attention, it made me realize that that's kind of crazy that we never put that population and thought about them enough to want to build something for them when we built it for everybody else. We did referendums and did all that, and so you know, I don't know. It's probably been, I don't know if I've been on that board a year and a half, but that board was formed. They came and talked to me about wanting to do this, and I was giving them some ideas because they knew I'd raise a couple $1 million when I helped the YMCA build a facility, and so they were picking my brain, and I realized right away that the board needed help. You know, well at the time Commissioner Anderson was involved, and he had kind of backed away and decided he wasn't. That he had some other things that he wanted to do. Commissioner Infantini never supported it, and so I decided, it's not in my district, it's in two other commissioners' district, that this is important to this county and this community, and so I started getting involved with it and said, hey, I'm gonna try to help them reach their goals and build a facility and take care of some kids that are disabled, doesn't have the ability to play on the same surfaces that in these other parks that we have, that somebody kind of forgot about it. So if I'm a bad guy for that, I'm gonna take it.
Remember, you can comment on anything you saw today or read in Florida Today by sending an email to letters@floridatoday.com. That's our program. We'll see you right here next week on WBCC and FloridaToday.com.